971 deaths were reported yesterday. As I noted, we checked the last 3 days. 2,950 Americans died from coronavirus in 3 days alone. And in context of perspective, 2,977 Americans died on 9/11. How could the president's son say there's been almost nothing as far as deaths are concerned?
This is what happens when you're so out of touch that you just don't care anymore. I mean, tell that to the 1,000 families who are going to be grieving a loss today. Tell that to any of the Americans who are confronting what is literally the worst mass casualty event in this country since World War II. This is destroying lives. It's the reason our economy is in such peril and such painful shape right now. And, you know, in some ways, it's very revealing that he said that, because it reveals just how fundamentally they don't get it. And I'll tell you this, you know, for all of us, no matter your politics, all of us who want our lives back, who want the economy fully open and school back open as normal, and to be able to gather with family without worrying for a second about whether it's safe, for all of us who want to get to the other side of this pandemic, there is no defeating it while denying it. And that's exactly what this president and his representatives like Donald Jr. have been saying. Why would we trust them to deal with this issue if they, even now, somehow don't understand how serious it is?
It seems that Pete Buttigieg is settling in nicely in his role as a attack dog when it comes to bad faith Republicans. And this instance where he set his sights on Don Jr. is no different. Pete's takedown came in the aftermath of this statement by the president's son during an interview with Laura Ingraham on Fox.
Give me a break, Laura. The reality is this. If you look, I put it up on my Instagram a couple days ago because I went through the CDC data because I kept hearing about new infections. But I was like, well, why aren't they talking about deaths? Oh, because the number is almost nothing, because we've gotten control of this thing. We understand how it works. They have the therapeutics to be able to deal with this. If you look at that, look at my Instagram, it's gone to almost nothing. We're outperforming Europe in a positive way so well because we've gotten a hold of this.
That deaths are down to almost nothing. On the day that Don Jr. said this, October 29th, there were 1,004 deaths. Over 1,000. I wonder how the families of those 1,000 dead Americans would feel about Don Jr. writing off those deaths as, quote, almost nothing, as if they basically didn't happen because they're not convenient when it comes to the message that the Trump campaign is trying to send, which is that everything is going fine, just fine. Something tells me that Don Jr. wouldn't be quite so dismissive if he had to actually face those families who lost someone to the virus that his father failed to contain. Consider too the irony of this being said on the same network that basically served as Benghazi watch for literal years. On an endless loop, all we would hear on Fox News day and night was Benghazi, Benghazi, Benghazi. That was for 4 dead Americans. We now have 230,000 dead Americans. And now the network is hosting a Trump congratulations tour on air? Really? I guess dead Americans are only a bad thing when the president's a Democrat. And otherwise, the sky's the limit when it comes to the death count that they're willing to absolve. And that gives the entire game away, because for Republicans, it was never actually about deaths, it was about attacking Democrats. It was about exploiting the values they pretended to espouse while it was politically convenient for them, only to be exposed as partisan hacks the very second the tables turned and they didn't even try to pretend to stand for anything. I know this game is tired, but just imagine if Obama was in charge of 230,000 dead Americans and 8% unemployment and 11 million jobs lost. We don't even have to imagine how hard they'd attack him, because all we have to do is look back at how hard they attacked him when 4 American lives were lost, when there was 4.7% unemployment, when he gained 12 million jobs. The GOP's bad faith would be absolutely laughable if it wasn't so pathetic. Now, as for coronavirus, Buttigieg summed it up perfectly. There is no defeating it while denying it, and that's presented itself every single day over the last 9 months. Because Trump opted to pretend that it wasn't real in deference to the stock market, we lost that window of time when we could actually contain the spread, when we should have been working lightning fast to coordinate a nationwide testing and contact tracing system and produce more PPE and endorse nationwide mask mandates and advocate for stay-at-home orders. What did Trump do? He stopped cruise ships from docking to keep his case numbers low.
They would like to have the people come off. I'd rather have the people stay, but I'd go with them. I told them to make the final decision. I would rather, because I like the numbers being where they are. I don't need to have the numbers double because of one ship. That wasn't our fault. And it wasn't the fault of the people on the ship either. Okay? It wasn't their fault either. And they're mostly Americans, so I can live either way with it. I'd rather have them stay on, personally.
He pretended it was contained. He said that cases were going down to zero, that it would miraculously disappear, that it would go away with the heat. He said anyone who wants a test could get a test. And as if that wasn't bad enough unto itself, what's worse is that he knew the truth. He told Bob Woodward during one of the 18 interviews that he voluntarily sat down for exactly what he should have told the American people about this virus.
And so what was President Xi saying yesterday?
Well, we were talking mostly about the virus, and I think he's going to have it in good shape. But it's a very tricky situation.
Indeed,
it goes through air, Bob. That's always tougher than the touch. The touch, you don't have to touch things, right? But the air, you just breathe the air, and that's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one. It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus. People don't realize we lose 25,000, 30,000 people a year here. Who would ever think that, right?
I know. It's
pretty amazing. And then I say, well, is that the same thing? This is more deadly. This is 5 per. This is 5% versus 1% and less than 1%. So this is deadly stuff.
He knew the lethality, he knew the transmissibility, he knew that it could impact young people as well as old people, and yet publicly, he lied. He politicized masks. He fomented protests against stay-at-home orders. He suggested that the whole thing was a hoax. He obfuscated the facts and sowed yet more chaos, and even now, to this very day, he continues to hold rallies in what can only be described as a super spreader tour to finish off his first term. According to a new study from Stanford University, it's estimated that 18 of Trump's recent large-scale campaign rallies ultimately resulted in 30,000 confirmed cases of coronavirus and actually led to more than 700 deaths among attendees and others infected by them. And it's not like this outcome is surprising. Trump's own friend and advisor, Herman Cain, literally caught coronavirus after Trump's Tulsa rally and then died a few days later. The point is that there is nothing and no one that Trump won't sacrifice to feed his own ego. The simple fact is that this virus won't be contained if the people charged with containing it don't believe that it exists. They will continue to push people to go back to work and businesses to open back up and kids to go back to school because deaths don't bother them, but the appearance of weakness does. And so they'll push for a full reopening, not because it's what's right for the American people, it's because it's what's right for their PR campaign. Because as far as they're concerned, they don't serve us, we serve them. So as you cast your ballots in the final days of this election, make sure this contrast is top of mind. On one hand, you have Joe Biden, who has taken this virus seriously since day one and who would defer to experts and scientists to get it under control. And on the other side, you have Donald Trump and his mouthpieces who won't even acknowledge that Americans' lives are being lost. Only one of these administrations care about keeping you safe. If you like this video, please check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I take a deep dive into the week's most important stories and interview major players in politics, including Kamala Harris, Katie Porter, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Eric Swalwell, Mary Trump, Al Franken, Cory Booker, and many, many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.